This is not a work of fiction. The characters and events depicted in this video game are entirely real. Any resemblance to real, living, or deceased individuals, or to actual events, is not mere coincidence. From this moment on, you will undergo the degradation of a mind, memories struggling against each other, trying to form a message, trying to remember a reason for existing in reality. The state or quality of having existence.
So, something cool happened to me recently. I applied to get access to an early demo of an upcoming game called AIKODE. It's being made by a solo dev who's handing out press kits if they accept your application. I thought I missed the boat when they tweeted out that they sent out copies and didn't get one, but I just got an email with the press kit. I got a lot of info from the game out of that email, much more so than what I expected from trailers. Even though I've been told that I can talk about every part of the demo, I'll just give you the elevator pitch, my first impressions of the game, what stood out for me in particular, and some comments directed towards the developer in regards to certain parts of the game. If you're wondering what AIKODE is, the press kit describes it as an action RPG with life sim elements. I'm actually going to coin a new term here just for this game, and call it a character action RPG, so I don't sound reductive by describing it as a Nier-like, or a Yoko Taro-like to be specific. Character action refers to the flashiness of the combat, and action RPG refers to the fact that enemies have level numbers above their health bars. If you've got an issue with the fact that I use character action, then tough titties. If you wanted to have accurate labels for your genres, you should have gotten a film and not video games. Anyways, AIKODE. What'd it do? You play as Aiko, or Nia, or maybe both? It's hard to describe the premise without giving too much away, but you'll know exactly what kind of game it is once you boot it up. It's clear that Yoko Taro's oeuvre is a major influence on the game, but it's not the sole influence.
Sorry, Leamy. I got lost in my thoughts there for a sec. Oh, let's get going. I bet Emma is waiting for us at the orphanage.
I see notes of Gravity Rush and Kingdom Hearts in the environment art. I see some Persona in the UI with how it keeps track of the time of day and day of the week. I even see some Scarlet Nexus in how one of the characters controls, and Bayo 2 in another. The demo features 4 separate environments, separated by cutscenes and loading transitions. You get a taste of combat in a few encounters, and the demo ends with a boss fight that you can retry from the main menu once you clear it. As far as demos go, and as far as indie games working on Unreal Engine 5 go, this is already an impressive looking game.
No, that's not a bug. That's how they look when they don't have animations.
The dev acknowledged in the email that there are some visual errors still present, but I could not tell you what they were. I was way too focused on the fact that they have one of the most detailed recreations of Shibuya I've ever seen in video games. Like, really detailed. Is Cover gonna be cool with this? When I said before that there were Kingdom Hearts influences, I had another place in mind, but showing this area to some friends had them pointing out that this has a heavy Kingdom Hearts 4 Final Fantasy Versus 13 vibe.
It all starts in the real world. The person who made this game was obsessed with making an exact copy of Shibuya. A real district of Tokyo, even if it took years.
Hey, good to know. After this, we switch over to Nia's perspective. This is the Gravity Rush, Kingdom Hearts inspired segment I was talking about. There's a very deliberate contrast being made between the drab, mundane Shibuya setting to this warm, whimsical steampunk-looking floating city. You can eavesdrop on these guys, and their conversations change based on the time of day, which you can change if you sleep on a bench. There's a guitar you can play with, and it does that Last of Us 2 thing where it simulates every possible note you can strum on it. I'm no music guy, so my attempts sounded abysmal, but you might be able to pull off a song if you've got the ear for it. Here's something that I really appreciate. When you walk over to this fountain, the music layers on a violin to accompany the backing track, and we're made to believe that the person playing the violin is the source of that sound. This is very clearly a reference to Devila in Nier, when you see her singing by the fountain in the village, and her vocals layer onto the town theme. This game isn't being coy with what it is, and if that reference went over your head, just walk a bit further down the path, and you'll be hit with...
Huh? What is going on?
So, I saw this in trailers, and this still caught me off guard. If you've played Automata, you'll know this is inspired by the copied city that Adam makes to imitate humans. Without getting too into the weeds of the plot, I like its inclusion here because its purpose is different from the purpose in Automata. Automata's copied city is as real a place as any other locale in that game. This hard shift seems to imply that we're not actually in the real world, which should have been obvious considering how we got to and from Shibuya at the start. This is where we get to try out combat, and again, it's pretty obvious where it takes its influences. Nia fights with tarot cards that she can control remotely, much like Kasane uses her knives in Scarlet Nexus. Instead of light and heavy attacks, AIKODE refers to them as close and area attacks. Close attacks are single target hits, and area attacks are sweeping hits that can hit multiple targets. The Bayonetta influences start popping up here, as the area attack is mapped to Y, and the close attack is mapped to B, instead of the typical XY setup you see in action games. You automatically target the nearest enemy, and you can press left or right on the D-pad to switch targets. When an enemy attacks, they'll flash red, make a noise, and rear back to warn you that they're attacking. You can dodge their attacks by pressing right trigger. Time it right, and you'll proc a perfect dodge that's similar to the ones that the Yorha androids can do in Automata. It's even got just a little bit of witch time in effect. This is a good starting point for combat, but I already had some nitpicks forming here. Something to be mindful of during combat is that no matter how far away you are from your target, doing any melee attack will warp you right in front of them. If you've played Virgil in DMC5, think of how he can directly trick towards his enemies. This sounds nifty, but a later fight has an enemy whose attack is a lingering hitbox that surrounds them, and if you're being careless, you can warp right into it and take a few hits as a result. As for Nia herself, she's got good animations, but it's really easy to cheese fights with her Y attack. If you hold down the area attack button, you'll launch an enemy into the air, and you can stay up there with them to do air combos by following them up with B attacks, or drag them back down with a drop attack by holding down the Y button in mid-air. Doing the launch attack pulls Nia away from surrounding enemies, and there's no penalty for doing this with every target. It'd be nice if her B attack had a charge function, so that you could hold it down to do a stronger attack that would mix up the button mashing. Maybe the attack could do a 360 sweep to knock back enemies that are trying to surround her. I appreciate all the effort put into signposting enemy attacks, but I think the camera could be pulled back a bit during combat. Sometimes I couldn't see the enemy rear back or flash, but I could hear the sound, but by then I was already taking the hits. I had some growing pains to get through to learn the timing between the rear back and the actual hit, but I think I've got it down now. Mood-wise, this section of the demo makes me think of the Purgatorio areas in Bayonetta. One of the recurring motifs that I got out of the demo was that Schrodinger's cat was going to play a big part in the themes, and I gotta commend AIKODE for not being subtle about that. Hell, there's an entire path full of cats, and you can either pet or kill them. Except Catrick, he's always gonna get the boot. You know it wouldn't be a Yoko Taro inspired game without the inclusion of text screens. I'm not even being smarmy about this, I respect the commitment to the bit. Once again, we're switching gears to Aiko this time, and she's the reason I say this game is inspired by Yoko Taro, and not just Nier because she's very obviously zero-coded. At first, I wasn't sure what the swimming controls were based on, but I figured out real quick that Bayonetta snake form in her second game had to be an inspiration, although not entirely. It controls more like steering a vehicle on Halo, where you push forward on the left stick and steer with the right stick. The swimming controls double as flight controls, and the shift between the two was practically seamless. So I don't know why my mind went here, but this game unintentionally has the best Iron Man flight controls I've ever seen. You click in left stick for flight mode, right stick for hover mode, and A to land on the ground. You can do a barrel roll while in flight mode. I don't know how combat will play out in these segments, but I think I'd like it if you could dodge while in hover mode, and if you could move a bit faster while hovering. But this is still really good stuff so far. This segment reaches a boss fight, and the end of the demo, so to speak. This is the fight I mentioned earlier, where the boss has a lingering hitbox that you could run into if you're careless with your inputs. Something I remember from the game's Twitter is that boss fights would be musical set pieces. I didn't know what that meant until I got to this part. Some of the boss's attack patterns are timed to beats in the song, not unlike Hi-Fi Rush. This means that, instead of reacting to boss attacks like in other games, you can anticipate certain phases based on which part of the song you're in. Theoretically, if you memorize a song, you can no damage this fight, and the game acknowledges this because you can choose the no-hit challenge difficulty before starting it. I don't know if everyone else has this problem with the fight, but I tend to focus on what animation the boss is doing to read its patterns, so that shockwave attack tends to get me even though I should know when it's going to happen from the song beats. I know this is the case because the shockwaves that hit me are the ones where the boss is not moving. Just as a point of contrast, the Bokushi boss in Automata also sends out shockwaves, but they always follow after the boss does a stomp attack on the ground, either with its feet or with its spherical chassis. My other issue with this boss is that it doesn't feel like Aiko's dodge has iframes the way Nia's does, or even how Aiko's does in training mode. Going back to Automata, I can jump over shockwaves or dodge through them to avoid taking hits. Once you beat this boss, it feels like the game is looping back to the beginning, and you can potentially play the game over and over again on an infinite loop. Or, you can press start to break the contract. If you break the contract, the demo acts as if you got ending E from Automata, and then mind freaks you some more. Again, I don't want to spill the beans too early, so I'll stay coy over what all this imagery means. But this is the best first impression a game could make to show exactly what it's about. Is it derivative? Somewhat, but it's a game riffing on Yoko Taro's work, so that's to be expected. And being derivative doesn't necessarily mean something's bad. It's all about how it uses its influences, and AIKODE seems to know what it's doing. I know the dev is watching every stream and tweet and video that comes out about their game, so I expect them to watch this at some point. Please don't take any of my comments as if I've got any authority on how character action combat should play out. I'm just going off of what I've played in other games and comparing it to how the game handles as it currently stands. Despite how fully fleshed out everything already feels, I don't expect any of this to be set in stone for the time being. I'm not expecting anything to change based on my input, and I think it would be poor form for me to even think I have that kind of sway in development. But I hope I throw out some ideas that could help build on what's already a really strong foundation for an action game. Also, I don't know how you did it, but you managed to capture that soft 3D look that early PS2 games had for pre-rendered cutscenes. I can't tell you to play AIKODE, as the demo's still not public, but wishlist it, follow the game on Twitter, and keep an eye out for it if and when it does have a public build. I don't want to draw attention away from AIKODE, but I'm glad that we're getting more games that are following Yoko Taro's style. Who knows when he'll make another one of these, so it's cool to see how other people put their own spin on the formula.